Welcome to Rome. Today's journey is another walk through the streets of the Eternal City. We'll begin at the Vatican City, the smallest country in the world, covering just under zero point 0.2 square miles. From there, we'll make our way to Castel Sant'Angelo, an impregnable fortress that once served as a refuge for popes. Strolling through Rome's picturesque streets, we'll conclude our tour in the Sant'Angelo district, where the Jewish ghetto once stood. Coming up, Secrets of the Eternal City, the Vatican, a fortress, and a historic ghetto. Are you ready? Let's set off. And remember, in Rome we never rush, because every step is a story. We begin our journey in Vatican City, the smallest country in the world, covering just 110 acres. The name Vatican originates from the Latin Vaticanus, meaning the hill of prophecies. This hill was often used by augurs, ancient soothsayers, who interpreted omens by observing the flight of birds. Vatican City is the spiritual heart of the Catholic Church and home to St. Peter's Basilica, the Apostolic Palace, and countless masterpieces of art and architecture. Established in 1929 by the Lateran Treaties between the Holy See and the Kingdom of Italy, the Vatican became a sovereign state, resolving the so-called Roman question. This unique nation has its own postal service, railway station, newspaper, radio, and television network. Its revenue comes primarily from pilgrimages, museums, handicrafts, stamp issuance, and financial investments. Enclosed by towering walls, Vatican City boasts extensive galleries, museums, the Vatican Gardens, the Pontifical Academy of Science, and the Vatican Observatory, founded in 1572. The Vatican also has its own military unit, the Swiss Guard, serving the popes continuously since 1506. The Swiss Guard was established when 150 mercenaries arrived from Switzerland to protect Pope Julius II and his successors. Just 20 years later, during the infamous sack of Rome, 147 guards lost their lives. In their honor, new guards are sworn in annually on May 6. To join the Swiss Guard, candidates must be unmarried Catholic men from Switzerland, aged 19 to 30, with prior military service in their home country. They must also meet a minimum height requirements of 5 feet 8 inches. Today, the Swiss Guard consists of 135 soldiers, continuing a tradition of dedication and loyalty. In 319 AD, Emperor Constantine the Great chose this location for the construction of the first Christian basilica, because it was the burial site of St. Peter. Before that, the area was home to the gardens of Agrippina the Elder, daughter of Agrippa, which were later inherited by her son Caligula. Caligula initiated the construction of a chariot racing stadium here, known as the Circus Vaticanus. The project was completed by Emperor Nero. This circus later became a site of martyrdom for Christians, who were blamed for the Great Fire of Rome. At the center of the circus stood a massive red granite obelisk, devoid of inscriptions, originally from a temple in Heliopolis. During the reign of Augustus, the obelisk was placed in Alexandria at the Julian Forum. Around 40 AD, Emperor Caligula had it transported to Rome and erected in the center of the circus, where it remained the largest obelisk in Rome for the next 300 years. At its peak was a gilded sphere that, according to tradition, held an urn containing the ashes of Julius Caesar, earning it the nickname Julia. Remarkably, this was the only obelisk in Rome to survive the barbarian invasions of the 5th century. In the 16th century, Pope Sixtus V ordered the obelisk to be relocated to the center of St. Peter's Square. This monumental task was assigned to papal architect Domenico Fontana. The intricate operation required 4 months of preparation, nearly 800 workers, horses, and elaborate cranes. The event was conducted in complete silence, enforced by a papal decree. Apparently, this silence was broken by a brave sailor who saved the operation by shouting to pour water on the excessively tight ropes. Although his intervention prevented a catastrophe, he had to seek a pardon from the Pope. After its successful relocation, Pope Sixtus V blessed the obelisk, purging it of its pagan associations. He dedicated it to the Invincible Cross, placing a relic of the true cross brought from the Holy Land by Saint Helena, Constantine's mother, inside the obelisk. In the mid-17th century, Gian Lorenzo Bernini incorporated the obelisk into his grand colonnade, using it as the central point of the oval. In 1817, astronomer Filippo Gili surrounded it with 16 plaques, creating a rose of the winds with directions and zodiac signs aligned along the meridian line. We are standing on the grandest stage of the Baroque Theatre of the Vatican, St. Peter's Square. Its monumental design as we know it today was crafted by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, who worked under the commission of Pope Alexander VII. From 1656, Bernini spent 11 years directing the extraordinary creation of one of the largest squares in the world. The square is elliptical in shape, measuring about 790 feet wide and 1,115 feet long, and can accommodate up to 300,000 people. The ellipse was a popular shape during the Baroque era, reflecting the discoveries of astronomers who found that stars move along elliptical orbits. Symbolically, it also represented the Urbi et Orbi blessing to the city and to the world given by a newly elected pope. The square is adorned by a magnificent double colonnade of 284 columns and 88 pillars arranged in 4 rows. Atop the colonnades are 140 statues of saints, martyrs, bishops, and popes. Thanks to Bernini's carefully planned perspective, all the statues appear perfectly proportional, even though those on the colonnades are half the size of the ones atop the basilica. A similar optical illusion can be observed in the colonnades themselves. What appears as a single row of columns from certain vantage points is in fact four rows, with the columns behind hidden by the slightly thicker front column. Bernini described his colonnade as a symbol of the church's maternal arms, open to embrace and welcome the faithful. Legend has it that there were plans for a third colonnade to enclose the square entirely, like hands clasped in prayer. Symmetrically placed on either side of the obelisk in the square are two fountains. Originally, there was just one, built in 1490 on the initiative of Pope Innocent VIII. During the redesign of the square, architect Carlo Maderno, who also designed the Acqua Paola fountain on Janiculum Hill, modified the fountain by inverting its upper basin to resemble a cardinal's hat. This change allowed the water to rise to an impressive height of 26 feet. Unfortunately, we can no longer see it today due to the need for water conservation. The second fountain, a near identical copy, was created by Bernini. While the two fountains appear similar, they differ in small details, including the papal coats of arms they bear. To enter St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, visitors must join a long line of pilgrims and tourists winding along the square's border. While waiting, let's take a closer look at the basilica itself. The cornerstone for the new basilica, which replaced Constantine's original church, standing for nearly 1,200 years, was laid on April 18, 1506, by Pope Julius II. The first architect, Donato Bramante, designed the structure as a Greek cross with a massive dome. Funding came partly from the sale of indulgences, and materials were sourced from dismantled ancient temples on the Roman Forum and from the Colosseum. This ambitious, monumental project underwent numerous revisions and spanned several decades, involving many renowned artists. Raphael modified the design to a Latin cross, while Antonio da San Gallo the Younger elevated the floor by 10 feet, creating the Vatican grottos. Eventually, Michelangelo Buonarroti unified the design, giving the basilica its monumental character, while dismantling much of his predecessor's work. The basilica was completed and consecrated on November 18, 1626, by Pope Urban VIII. The facade, designed by Carlo Maderno, nephew of Domenico Fontana, features 9 balconies. The central one, known as the Loggia of Blessings, is where the announcement of a new pope is made. The facade is crowned by 2 incomplete towers, or bell towers, to which Giuseppe Valadier added 13-foot clocks in the late 18th century. The left tower, known as the Bell Tower, houses 6 bells. The largest, the St. Mark Bell, weighs 16,000 pounds and rings to announce the death or election of a pope. Below the roofline, an inscription in Latin reads, "In honor of the Prince of Apostles, Paul V Borghese, Pope, in the year 1612, the 7th year of his pontificate." Atop the facade are 13 statues: Jesus, John the Baptist, and 11 apostles, excluding St. Peter and Judas. Beneath the Loggia of Blessings, there is a bas-relief titled The Giving of the Keys to St. Peter, created by Ambrogio Bonvicino. The basilica is entered through 5 doors, each with its own significance. The central doors, which are 23 feet tall, originate from Constantine's old basilica and were crafted around 1445 by Antonio di Pietro Avellino, known as filarette. These are famously called the filarette doors. To the left of the filarette doors are the door of death, followed by the door of good and evil, the door of sacraments, and finally the holy door. The holy door is ceremonially opened by the Pope to mark the beginning of a holy year. A holy year, a time of special grace for Christians, was originally celebrated every 100 years. The first holy year was initiated by Pope Alexander VI, who opened the walled-up holy door on Christmas in 1499. Today, holy years occur every 25 years. The most recent opening of the Holy Door took place on Christmas Eve 2024, conducted by Pope Francis. As you enter the portico, be sure to look up. There you'll see a Baroque replica of Giotto's mosaic, which dates back to the original basilica. Known as the Navicella, or Little Boat, it depicts the apostles huddled in fear in a small boat, while Jesus walks on the water and calls out to St. Peter. This humble boat symbolizes the Church, which, despite the storms, remains afloat through faith. Upon entering the basilica, head to the right to the first side chapel. Here you'll find the Pietà, a breathtaking sculpture created by young Michelangelo Buonarroti. It was commissioned by French Cardinal Jean de Billière de la Grolade and was likely intended as part of his tomb, as it was originally placed in the chapel where the cardinal was buried. Although completed in 1499 and widely admired, the Pietà was initially unsigned, leaving its authorship uncertain. According to legend, when Michelangelo overheard that his masterpiece was being attributed to another artist, he snuck into church at night and inscribed on the Virgin Mary's sash a phrase that translates to "Made by Michelangelo Buonarroti, a Florentine." Interestingly, this remains the only work Michelangelo ever signed. As you gaze at this remarkable sculpture, note the portrayal of the Virgin Mary, a figure of serene beauty, youthful, and almost tranquil, even as she cradles the lifeless body of her son. Her face shows neither pain nor anguish. Michelangelo explained that this depiction was inspired by ancient Christian iconography, where Mary's youth symbolizes her purity and innocence. Similarly, Jesus' figure is rendered with masterful anatomical precision. His body shows only subtle traces of torture and suffering, with the entire scene exuding a quiet calm as if reflecting the stillness after a great storm. It might feel natural to admire the Pietà only from the front, However, did you know that the back of the sculpture is unfinished? This was a deliberate choice by Michelangelo, who, as a perfectionist, left it incomplete to symbolize its divine and infinite nature. The Pietà is the first of four sculptures of this type that Michelangelo created during his lifetime, setting a timeless standard for art and devotion. A little further inside is the Chapel of Saint Sebastian, adorned with a mosaic, The Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian by Pier Paolo Cristofari, based on an earlier painting by Domenichino. On either side of the chapel are monuments to two popes, Pius XI, who signed the Lateran Treaties establishing Vatican City as a sovereign state, and Pius XII, who led the Church during World War II. The altar of this chapel holds the tomb of St. John Paul II. After his death in 2005, he was initially buried in the Vatican grottos. Following his beatification on May 1, 2011, his remains were moved to the basilica to the former burial site of Innocent XI. After John Paul II's canonization, the marble slab on his sarcophagus was updated, with the word Beatus replaced by Sanctus. With so many chapels, sculptures, paintings, and masterpieces in this huge basilica, it would take at least a whole day to visit them all. Instead, let's focus on a few selected, interesting details. Take a moment to admire the massive dome, whose decorative design was conceived by Giuseppe Cesari, a mentor of Caravaggio. The dome features 16 bishops, 12 apostles, John the Baptist, St. Paul, the Madonna, and Christ. Around the base of the dome, a Latin inscription translates to "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven." At the very top, inside the lantern, is a depiction of God the Father. You can climb to the dome for another spectacular view of the city, as well as a breathtaking perspective of the Vatican on the other side. The climb involves 551 steps, though part of the journey can be skipped by taking the elevator. The dome is supported by four massive piers, designed by Bramante, each dedicated to significant relics housed in the basilica. These include the Veil of St. Veronica, said to bear the image of Christ's face, the Skull of St. Andrew, the brother of St. Peter, the Lance of Longinus, the Roman centurion who pierced Christ's side on the cross, and wood from the true cross, believed to have been brought by St. Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, during her pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Each pier is adorned with marble statues nearly 16 feet tall, masterfully crafted by renowned sculptors. The statue of Longinus was personally carved by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Near the pier of St. Andrew is the entrance to the Vatican grottos, where many popes are also buried. At the intersection of the nave and the transept lies the main altar, where only the Pope or someone of the Pope's explicit permission can celebrate Mass. The altar is positioned directly above the tomb of St. Peter, which lies about 23 feet below. A staircase in front of the altar leads down to the tomb. Unfortunately, due to the fragile decorations and the need to protect the heritage within the grotto, access to the sacred space is highly restricted. The altar is crowned by a monumental bronze baldachin, most commonly attributed to Gian Lorenzo Bernini. However, it's worth noting that Bernini did not work on it alone. The project's design was heavily influenced by Francesco Borromini. The bronze used for the baldachin was sourced in part from the decorative elements of the Pantheon. The twisted columns are inspired by those in Constantine's original basilica and were modeled after the columns of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. The construction of the baldachin took 9 years and was inaugurated by Pope Urban VIII in 1633. Before leaving the basilica, take a moment to admire its remarkable floor. Along the main axis of the basilica, you'll find stone markers placed every few feet, indicating where the largest churches in the world would end if they were overlaid on St. Peter's Basilica. Near the main entrance is a round disc known as the Rota Porphyritica. It was on this very disc that Charlemagne knelt during his coronation as emperor by Pope Leo III on Christmas night in the year 800. In Constantine's original basilica, the disc was located near the main altar, not at the entrance. After leaving the basilica, take a moment to send postcards home with greetings from Vatican City. Only mail sent from this post office will bear the unique stamp of the world's smallest country. Also remember that every Sunday at noon, the Angelus prayer is led by the Pope. You can catch a glimpse of him in the window of the residential wing to the right. On Wednesdays, there is a general audience with the Pope, which requires special free tickets to attend. Passing by the sculpture, Angels Unawares by Timothy Schmaltz, a striking depiction of a boat filled with people of various races and cultures sheltered by angelic wings, we continue our journey. At this point, there are two options for continuing the walk. The first is to head toward the Vatican museums, located to the left as you walk away from St. Peter's Basilica. To get there, exit the square, turn left, and follow the Vatican walls to the border of Vatican City. Inaugurated in 1506 by Pope Julius II, the Vatican Museums are an enormous complex comprising over 20 sections with a path stretching more than 4 miles. The museums showcase an incredible collection of sculptures, paintings, and artifacts created by some of the greatest artists in history. One of the most treasured highlights is the Sistine Chapel, adorned with Michelangelo's breathtaking frescoes. It is also the site of significant ceremonies, including the conclave to elect a new pope. If you choose to visit the museums, be sure to purchase tickets in advance to save both time and money. Plan to spend the rest of your day there, though even one visit is hardly enough to fully uncover the wonders of this extraordinary place. The second round on our itinerary leads from St. Peter's Square toward Castel Sant'Angelo. To begin, leave the square by heading to the left, passing the beautiful Fountain of Tears. Take a moment to notice the imposing wall. This is where the secret corridor known as Il Passetto once ran, connecting the Vatican to Castel Sant'Angelo. This passageway allowed popes to quickly evacuate the Vatican in times of danger. Among those who used it were Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, fleeing from the French, and Clement VIII during the 1527 Sacco di Roma, when Rome was sacked by the mercenaries of Charles V. The corridor also featured prominently in Dan Brown's novel Angels and Demons. Continue along the charming and peaceful Via Borgo Pio, retracing the steps of papal architect Domenico Fontana, who likely walked the same path to his work. His residence was in one of the side streets nearby, adding a touch of history to this picturesque route. The next stop on our walk is Castel Sant'Angelo, originally built as a mausoleum for Emperor Hadrian. This monumental structure was begun around 130 AD and completed in 138 AD, after the emperor's death. It served as a mausoleum until 271 AD, when it was integrated into Rome's defensive walls. In later centuries, it was converted into a prison, and by the 5th century, it was used as a fortress. The name Castel Sant'Angelo originated in 590 AD during a plague, when Pope Gregory I led a penitential procession and reportedly saw the Archangel Michael on top of the mausoleum sheathing a fiery sword, a sign that God's wrath had ended and the plague was over. In 608 AD, Pope Boniface IV erected the Chapel of the Holy Angel in Heaven on the structure's summit. During the Middle Ages, the castle passed through the hands of various Roman families, the last being the Orsini family. Pope Nicholas III, a member of this family, commissioned the construction of the secret passage Il Passetto in 1277, connecting the castle to the Vatican Palace to allow the Pope to escape in times of danger. From then on, Castel Sant'Angelo became a papal fortress, housing archives, a treasury, a courtroom, and a prison. Successive popes expanded and fortified the structure. The current statue of the Archangel Michael atop the castle dates to 1753 and was crafted by Anton von Verschaffelt. It replaced an earlier marble angel, which had been moved to the courtyard, and had itself replaced a bronze angel that had been melted down to make cannons. In the 19th century, the castle served as military barracks, and since the 20th century it has been a museum. In the past, a cannon was fired from the castle at noon, a tradition now continued on the Janiculum Hill. Castel Sant'Angelo has been popular for centuries, so much so that Giacomo Puccini set the final act of Tosca there. Opposite the castle lies the Ponte Sant'Angelo, which was commissioned in 130 AD to connect the left bank of the Tiber with Hadrian's mausoleum. The bridge was later renovated by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, who adorned the balustrades with 10 angel statues, mostly sculpted by his students. Two of these, the angel with the crown of thorns and the angel with the scroll, were created by Bernini himself and were considered so exquisite that the Pope ordered they not be placed on the bridge. Today, these statues can be admired in the church of Sant'Andrea delle Fratte, featured in our first walk, Welcome to Rome. The square near Sant'Angelo Bridge has always been a bustling area, as it served as a pilgrimage route to the Vatican. For this reason, it was also a site for public executions, where mutilated bodies were often displayed as a warning. It was said that Pope Sixtus V hung more heads on Ponte Sant'Angelo than there were melons for sale in the markets of Campo de' Fiori. Let's move on through the charming Via dei Coronari, one of the first straight streets of ancient Rome. It runs alongside the Stadium of the Mission, which once stood where Piazza Navona is today. The street's name comes from the vendors of corona, rosaries, as devotional items were highly sought after pilgrims passing through here. This quaint, less than half a mile stretch feels frozen in time, surrounded by old townhouses, squares, and palaces. Via dei Coronari leads us to the ruins of the ancient Stadium of the Mission. If you'd like to learn more about it, check out our video from route number 4 titled Baroque Masterpieces with a Touch of Antiquity, which is linked in this material. Let's take another look at the stunning Baroque living room of Rome, Piazza Navona, which intersects our route today. Now let's keep going. Continuing our walk, we arrive at the church of Sant'Andrea della Valle. It was from its steps in 1848 that Adam Mickiewicz addressed the Polish legions forming in Italy. The church stands out for its remarkable facade, though it has a touch of asymmetry. The right side is missing an angel. According to legend, when Pope Alexander VII Kiji expressed his dislike for the sculpture of the first angel, the enraged sculptor Antonio Fancelli shouted that if the Pope wanted a second angel, he would have to make it himself. As you can see, the angel is still missing. Sant'Andrea della Valle is also home to the third largest dome in Rome, attributed to Borromini. The church's impressive single-nave structure dazzles with its ornate decorations and stunning frescoes. The figures depicted seem to break free from their frames, creating a truly spectacular Baroque masterpiece. Heading further south, we arrive at Piazza delle Biscione, a charming little square, home to the Orsini Pio Righetti Palace. This building was constructed around 1450 on the ruins of the Temple of Venus Victrix and Pompeii's Theatre. In the 19th century, the ancestral residence of the Orsini family was acquired by banker Pietro Righetti. During excavations at the palace's foundation, Righetti discovered a bronze statue of Hercules from the 2nd century AD in the courtyard. Standing nearly 13 feet tall, the statue was gifted or sold to Pope Pius IX in 1865 and is now housed in the Vatican museums. On a neighboring building, you can spot another depiction of the Madonna. It's remarkable how many of these images are scattered throughout Rome, though only a fraction of them have survived to this day. As you explore this city, take note of these treasures. They adorn intersections and house facades, watching over the city's inhabitants for centuries. In the past, candles placed near these images provided the only light in Rome's dark alleyways, helping people navigate the city. Let's continue through an extraordinary passage under an arch that is part of the ruins of Pompeii's Theatre. Here, you'll find a small altar with a copy of an image of Mary. The original came from the deconsecrated church of Santa Maria in Grotta Pinta, which was attached to the Orsini Pio Righetti Palace and closed in 1926. In medieval times, Roman ruins were often called caves, and the arch, likely already painted at the time, earned the name Grotta Pinta, painted cave. On the opposite side of the exit stands the former church building, which served as the Orsini family chapel from 1599. Today, the space is used for hosting public events. The final part of today's walk takes us to the Jewish ghetto. The Roman ghetto was established in 1555 when Pope Paul IV issued a papal bull requiring all Jews in Rome to live within a designated small area near the Tiber. The district was surrounded by walls, and its gates were locked at night under guard. The residents were cramped into the space. Their opportunities for trade, religion, and education were restricted. Yet they were still burdened with taxes and fees to the Pope, who provided only minimal social assistance. The walls of the Roman ghetto remained standing until 1870, making it the last ghetto in Europe to be dismantled. This area has a unique atmosphere, as if you're stepping into another world. In front of many buildings in this neighborhood, you can spot brass cobblestones engraved with the names, birth dates, and death dates of those murdered or deported to extermination camps during World War II. These poignant memorials serve as a painful but vital reminder of a tragic past. Let's move on to the square where the ghetto wall once stood, Piazza della Cinque Scole, or the Square of Five Synagogues. Since only one synagogue was allowed within the ghetto, all congregations had to share a single building. The square is home to the Fountain of Tears, so named because of the nearby church Santa Maria del Pianto, Our Lady of Tears. The miraculous image of the weeping Madonna was moved to this church, as it is said that Mary shed tears over a crime committed in her presence in the mid 16th century. In 1591, with Pope Gregory XIII's approval, a fountain designed by Giacomo della Porta was installed in Piazza Giudea, bringing clean water to the ghetto via a restored ancient aqueduct. Prior to this, residents drew water directly from the Tiber. The fountain was originally adorned with two dragons, the emblem of the Boncompagni family, along with a menorah, the seven-branched candelabrum, and symbol of Judaism. Sadly, these elements were removed during the pontificate of Innocent X. After the ghetto was demolished in the 1880s, the fountain was dismantled and its original location marked with a white stone. It was reinstalled in Piazza della Cinque Scole in 1930. Continuing our walk, we reach Piazza Mattei, home to one of the most beautiful fountains of the late 16th century, the Turtle Fountain. It was commissioned by Muzio Mattei, the owner of the nearby palace, who agreed to tidy up the square in exchange for having water routed to his residence. Giacomo della Porta designed the fountain's basins, while the sculptures of youth were crafted by Taddeo Landini. Gian Lorenzo Bernini later added the final touch, placing marble turtles on the upper basin of the fountain. The design embodies the Latin proverb festina lente, make haste slowly, with the swift dolphins at the base contrasting with the tranquil turtles above. The original turtles were replaced with replicas in 1979 after one was stolen. Next, we arrive at Piazza Margana, named after the Margana Tower, which belonged to an influential Roman family. The Margana family was involved in construction projects, including paving the street leading from the Bridge of Angels to St. Peter's Basilica during the pontificate of Sixtus IV. The tower and adjoining house were acquired around 1305. An ancient column embedded in the wall suggests that Roman ruins once stood here. From the square Via del Polaki extends, once used by Polish pilgrims on their way to the Polish church of St. Stanisław, Bishop of Martyr. This is the oldest Polish establishment outside the country, built in 1578 on the foundations of the Roman theatre of Balbus. Its construction was made possible thanks to the efforts of Cardinal Stanisław Hozjusz under Pope Gregory XIII, the generosity of Queen Anna Jagiellon, King Stefan Batory, and support from noble families. The church also hosted a hospice that served pilgrims as a place for lodging and assistance. Today, it remains a center of pastoral care for Poles in Rome. For many years, its protector was Karol Wojtyła, later Pope John Paul II. Let's return briefly to the ghetto, to its other end near the Tiber, where the Great Synagogue now stands, the final stop of today's route. Known as the Tempio Maggiore, or the New Synagogue, it is a monumental structure in the Assyro-Babylonian style, topped with a distinctive square dome resembling a canopy. The cornerstone was laid in 1901, and the synagogue was officially opened on July 28, 1904. Its architects were Oswald Armani and Vincenzo Costa. Across from the portico of Octavia, which we explore in the second walk, stands the church of San Gregoria della Divina Pietà. Its facade features an oval relief depicting Christ on the cross. Nearby was one of the gates to the ghetto, and today it marks the symbolic end of our walk. Thank you for joining this journey, which took us from the Vatican through the monumental Castel Sant'Angelo to the historic Jewish ghetto. We hope this walk has allowed you to feel the heartbeat of Rome, a city that seamlessly blends ancient history with vibrant modernity. May these sights and stories stay with you, inspiring future explorations in the Eternal City.